There's a sound of my memory that never quite fades, the oppressive silence of a dank cryptic cell. Just recently, some information was given to me through my wife that she kept various amounts of my writings. You lose your sense of identity in prison. And when I was very young, that almost happened numerous times. In the process of life, you learn to understand the grander scheme of things and you search for meaning. Greetings and salutations. I'm Victor Usordi, and welcome to my channel at 28 to Persevere. Thanks for watching. You know, the things I went through, I like to lay out to everyone. I try to speak about it in an honest fashion. I try to be as candid as I can be, and as honest as I can be, as my recollections recall me to be. And I believe that this format and this platform allows me an opportunity to reach a wide spectrum of people of all backgrounds and all ways of life. And it allows me to share on a wide scale, not just my own personal life, but to share the insight that I believe is universal, the insights that we all experience in life, the insight into our own sufferings, our own trauma, or the injustice imposed upon us and how we respond to it, our own wills to persevere through trials and tribulations, the fortitude that we must delve into inside us to give us the strength to overcome whatever the odds and adversities laid out before us. The gods work in mysterious ways, and we respond to whatever the fates decree that they laid out upon us. That pathway of opportunity that life is. I mean, it's a journey. It truly is. And my channel, 28 to Persevere, has given me an opportunity to share my journey and to elaborate upon my experiences extensively throughout my 28 years of incarceration. I've delved into a lot of the horror show that it was, and I sit here today strong in will and allowing myself to be comfortable in this arena. It's still, very new to me, technology and everything that comes with it. And I'm going as I go. Just recently, some information was given to me through my wife that she kept various amounts of my writings. Throughout my years of incarceration, I wrote many reflections and poetry, and these renderings reflect my journey, the suffering that I endured, the pain, and it also reflects my hopes, my dreams, the loves that I had for so many people, the lost love, the regrets, my fears, and my indomitable will to persevere. They encompass a wide spectrum of emotions, as you can imagine, and experiences, and just mandarins on my life. They're written down in prose form, but also just thoughts, random ideas that I had about my life. The poetry that I wrote really reflects not only my journey, but an insight into my mind and how I viewed the world outside the wall and my experiences within it and the people that I came in contact with, my own personal ambitions and my desires and my lust for life, but also the fragile mind that I had. I was very fragile at the sense that when I was young, I was on the verge of breaking in the sense of living a shattered existence, being led astray by the world around me, feeding into the world that I lived in that wasn't really conducive to a mind that was very impressionable, as most young minds are, to the lack of empathy and the lack of compassion and hatred that was directed in a fashion that could destroy me. And I try to channel all that, and that's what I wrote. I wrote down things, but on a personal level, and it was very private to me, something that I didn't just talk to anyone about. I never showed anybody my writings or anything like that. I sent them home to my wife. She was practically the only person that saw them. Sometimes I would share them with other family members, but very rarely. I read extensively while I was incarcerated. I was a connoisseur of literature. I love to read, and I love all different genres. Obviously, you know, the philosophical genre. I love philosophy. All the type of various literature there, incorporating that. And obviously, I love some fiction. I'm a big horror connoisseur, and novels, novellas, and whatnot. I also read various books on history, and tried to understand books on inspirational books on life and overcoming struggle. We all pick and choose what we read and process it differently, and how we then use that information in a productive or constructive or destructive manner. So I used to collect a lot of books, and I'd write down different quotes about things I went through that were relevant to me in my life, and I would send these quotes out to people also. But my main obviously means to an end was writing for myself, writing on a personal level. So I collected these writings throughout the years, and my wife and sent them home. My wife kept them in bins, and they was unearthed to me recently. So I've been going through them. So I want to just read an intro into the introduction that I have for the book idea that I have. So I'll give you a second here and I'll read it to you. Let me know what you all think. There's a sound of my memory that never quite fades, the oppressive silence of a dank cryptic cell. For 28 years, starting at the impressionable age of 19, I lived in that deafening silence and perpetuity reverberating in my head. Introvertedly, I stared wide-eyed into a void that was constantly watching me, forebodingly waiting to swallow what remained of who I was. For 28 years, I stared into a void so deep and all-consuming, it became my headspace, signifying nothing but represented everything. In a world of cold concrete, steel bars, and the ceaseless echo resounded in my mind of lost time, fading memories, and dreams unrealized, a state of perpetual darkness became my ally, a state of mind that bore no resemblance to the thoughts of a life beyond the void. Staring into the void, my poetry reflections reflect my life behind bars of 28 years. So I wrote to find a personal headspace that would be conducive to understanding the world around me, that would allow me not only insight into my own psychology and how I was thinking and how I was processing all this information and being educated by the world around me. I would read and I would try to research things on my own, and then I lived the life beyond the wall, where it was very impressionable to a kid who was 19 years of age. And throughout my time of incarceration, when I would write, it would allow me that outlet and that insight into not only my own personal headspace, but the world beyond the wall. Um, I divulged so much through these videos of how I feel and things I experience on a personal level, but there were a lot of things I wrote down in poem form that goes a little bit deeper, some profoundly so. You see my shattered existence at that time and how I was trying to put the pieces back together to become whole again, because I was shattered in so many form of fashion. I can admit that now. Back then, I would never even attempt to process that and admit that. But I put the pieces back together and held it together with crazy glue, in a sense. I was just trying to make sense of the senseless nature and the injustice of what I felt was, personally, what I felt was I was personally going through, and what my family were going through. I mean, they suffered unmercifully throughout that time of incarceration, and my poems do reflect that also. So give me some insight. Give me your opinion and whether or not anyone would be interested in this endeavor that I've just begun to. And I'm going to continue to write. For my own prerogative. This isn't anything that I'm doing to dramatize what I went through or to sensationalize it in any form or fashion, but it's something that I believe is invaluable to others too. It may help someone with their own trauma and their own tribulations and the horrors that they endure, the life that they had, whatever it was or is, and what they're going through, and what they desire to overcome. And maybe this will give them some insight into that and to help them. And so I believe that it's twofold. It allows me an outlet, obviously, but it also can help others. And in the process of life, you learn to understand the grander scheme of things, and you search for meaning, and you search for purpose beyond your initial wants and what you believe you need in this life. And perhaps this is a little token of my appreciation to be able to be standing and sitting in the world that I stand and sit in now, way beyond the wall, away from that mentality and that anger and that hatred that was channeled in a direction at times they're so self-destructive. Obviously, emotions ran the gamut in prison, and most people are led by their emotions, and their intellect is completely discarded. The emotions can override that at times, especially in the prison system when you're living impulsively each day, responding to the world around you in a form and a fashion that is predicated on your will to persevere and survive that moment. So my writings, I would sit back in my cell when I had that time to reflect. A lot of times I'd put my headphones on, listen to my music, and just zone out the world the best I could, and get deeply into my own self and my own headspace to find out who and what I was in a sense. You lose your sense of identity in prison. And when I was very young, that almost happened numerous times. So hit me up with a comment. Let me know what you all think, whether or not this is of interest of anyone. And as always, I very much appreciate all the comments, good, bad, or indifferent. And until next time, go with the gods and persevere.